We know we keep hearing about this Iran deal, how bad the Iran deal is. And, there was a question for quite a while, and Senator Flake's office has been very vocal about the fact that they were lobbied very hard by the President of the United States to support the Iran deal. And so the senator said he was going to give it a lot of thought. He came forward a week or so ago and said he can't support the deal. And then there's some misinformation that's been out there about him and Senator McCain supporting this deal. But most importantly, what's happening in the Senate with this resolution and this of disapproval and how it's being stalled by Democrats. So what we've done is we've asked Senator Flake to join the show and give us some insight on what's happening in the Senate, what's going on with the Iran deal. So, Senator, thanks for the time. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Mike.
I hope I explained that correctly in what happened, how you were lobbied by the White House and then your decision to not support the deal. And I read your comments on why you weren't going to support it. Can you reiterate some of that for us?
You bet. Well, just first, this is an important agreement that's going to last beyond this administration and beyond the next administration. And I thought it deserved due diligence. I wanted to go to every classified hearing, every regular hearing, and otherwise, and be briefed on it, and I was, and I came to the conclusion that we should not support the agreement. What we're trying to do right now is get a final vote on the agreement. Under the Cardin-Corker legislation, Congress could express its approval or disapproval on this measure, but we've been blocked from getting a final vote on that.
So when you look at what's happening now, is there any way to change anyone's mind? The more information that comes out now with the new information out of Iran with their uranium reserves, where it's not, they don't have to go outside of the nation of Iran. We keep hearing the Ayatollah keeps coming out and saying, death to America, and we're always going to be the enemies, and they call us the great Satan, and they call Israel the little Satan. Is there anybody's mind that could possibly be changed on this, or is this a done deal?
I think it's a done deal. At this point, everyone has announced where they are. And a lot of this stuff has been known in terms of, the death to America chants and the antics of the Ayatollah. So I don't think you're going to change any minds. What I think we ought to have, though, is a final vote where everybody expresses their opinion, not just a procedural vote to get to a final vote. And I disagree with my leadership on this issue. My leadership has decided just to have another cloture vote, hoping that somebody will change their mind on the cloture vote to get to the final vote, when the Democrats have already offered to have a final vote if the threshold is set at 60 votes, where a cloture vote would be. I say take it. We already know the end of this movie. We've seen it.
Right.
The president has sufficient votes to sustain a veto. He has far more than enough votes to do so. So even if several people change their mind, he would have sufficient votes to sustain a veto. So I say get a final vote, whether the threshold is at 60 or a simple majority. That's important to put people on record. So if this deal blows up, a year from now, if Iran cheats on it or whatever else, nobody can point back and say, well, I really didn't vote for this agreement. I voted just not to proceed because amendments weren't allowed. Believe me, you can spin procedural votes, but you can't spin a final vote. And so I think we ought to get to a final vote.
Speaking of that spinning of procedural votes and everything else, can you clarify the situation where both you and Senator McCain were accused by some of voting in favor of the Iran deal? Can you talk about the vote that actually was in question and what happened there?
You bet. Back when we were arguing for the Corker-Cardin bill, and let me back up even further, the president negotiated this agreement as an executive agreement, which he has the authority to do. I don't think it was wise to do so, but he has the authority to do. He has waiver authority on the sanctions, and so Congress had given him that waiver authority previously, and so we had no role in voting on this Iran deal unless we created that role. That's what the Corker-Cardin bill did. It gave Congress a role. The president didn't like it, but in the end, there were sufficient votes in the Senate. It passed 98-1. But there were some who thought that we shouldn't have the Corker-Cardin legislation, that we shouldn't even be voting on this at all. And they attempted to torpedo the bill by offering some controversial amendments, so-called poison pill amendments, that are politically tough to vote against, but they would have tanked the Corker-Cardin legislation. And so some of us voted against those amendments as a way to keep the final bill intact and be able to have this vote we're pushing for now. And that's what that is. Somebody conflated the two and said, no, McCain and Flake voted for this deal. Not true at all.
Yeah,
I'm glad you clarified that well, and I appreciate that.
Well, again, we're going to have disagreements. I know you and I have had disagreements about Cuba and some other things, and those are always going to come up, and they should be dealt with when they come up. But when it's not accurate, I just want to make sure we're getting accurate information and how people are voting and why they're doing it, because this is such an important time in our country. This Iran deal is going to have implications for decades to come, and I think it's just such an important issue.
It is, and I think the original post saying that we had voted for the Iran deal somehow, some website put it out, and I think that website has since come back and said, no, we were mistaken, we were wrong. But as you know, with the internet sometimes, once something is out, it takes on a life of its own. And,
right.
And so I've seen these tweets and other things saying that I voted for the deal, and it's just a little confusing.
Well, Senator, I hope that when you're back, when you're in Arizona next time, you'll be able to come in the studio with us, and we can spend some time talking about a multitude of things that are happening. But I appreciate the clarification this morning.
Hey, you bet. And thanks for having me on. Thanks for the work you do.
All right. Thank you very much. That was Senator Jeff Flake spending just a couple of minutes with us, just a clarification of what's going on with the Iran deal.